mathematician Charles Babbage. When he ordered new tables himself, he had the calculations done twice by two different human computers, so he could check one against the other.
The Astronomical Society had appointed a committee to prepare certain tables. We had decided on the proper formulae and had put them in the hands of two computers for calculation. We met one evening for the purpose of comparing the calculated results.
58.54. Yeah. 63, 18.55.
Correct.
67, 38.45.
Sorry, I've got 61, 38.45. Found it. It's an error on mine. Right. 67, 38.45.
Finding many discordances, I expressed to my friend the wish that we could calculate by steam, to which he assented as within the bounds of possibility.
The Victorian age had seen machines taking over all kinds of physical tasks. Why not this mental task of calculation, which the human computers were obviously so bad at? After all, the Industrial Revolution itself was part of the problem. Developments in civil and industrial engineering relied on accurate calculations. So did navigation. The volume of traffic was building up between Europe and the newly independent America. There were reports of ships running aground because of inaccuracies in the navigation tables. So Babbage designed a calculating machine and built just this small section. It's set up to display a sequence of squares, read vertically simply by turning a handle. 9 is 3 squared, 4 squared is 16. Babbage called it a difference engine because it builds up tables, like this one of squares, by a procedure called the method of differences, which was comparatively easy to mechanize. For even greater accuracy, the full machine would also print out the answers. Recognizing the value to the nation of accurate tables, the government provided the money to pay for development, but Babbage never completed his engine. He was a poor manager, but the main problem was that he'd had a better idea, a fundamentally different one.
The difference engine was a single-purpose machine like the car or aeroplane. It could do just one thing, compile tables. Babbage now dreamed of a general-purpose machine, capable of calculating anything the human computer could do.
It's because of this machine, rather than the difference engine, that people rate Babbage as the grand ancestral figure in the history of computing. This particular piece was under construction at the time of Babbage's death. It is a small experimental piece that is all, in fact, of the engine that was ever completed. The largest design of this kind that Babbage devised would, in fact, be the size of a small steam locomotive. The machine is revolutionary in many respects. It has much in common with modern digital computers, which is what is quite extraordinary given the time in which it was devised. The mill, which is what we would now call the central processing unit, the place that the machine operated on information, is quite separate from what we would now call memory, what Babbage called the store. The separation of store and mill is a feature of the subsequent electronic developments. Perhaps the most revolutionary feature of the whole machine is the fact that it's programmable. It's a general-purpose programmable machine. And Babbage used punch cards to program the machine.
The idea of using punched cards was borrowed from the textile industry. The French silk weaver Jacquard had already shown that such cards could be used to control a loom. The pattern of holes in each successive card controlled the position of steel rods, which in turn determined which threads of the warp should be lifted above the shuttle and which remain below. This produced the pattern, and a different sequence of cards would produce a different pattern. Jacquard even had a set of cards which wove his own portrait. But silk weaving was all Jacquard's loom would ever do. Babbage planned to use cards to make his analytical engine capable of a limitless range of different types of computation.
That, I think, was a real profound difference in the way people thought of machines, because for the first time in history, you had someone designing a machine who didn't really think, as he was designing it, all of the different ways that it could be used, what it was good for. It was good for anything, and he would worry about that later on, but for the moment he would concentrate on getting the machine to work in a very general sort of way, and then having the specific uses attended to later. What we nowadays call software was really born in that moment when someone thought that you could separate out those two functions of a machine.
Babbage left hundreds of drawings of the machine's hardware, its wheels and shafts. But what we know of the software, of how the analytical engine would be used, comes mainly from one of the most romantic figures in the whole history of the computer. Ada, Countess of Lovelace, was Lord Byron's daughter. At a party at Babbage's house, she saw the test piece of his first machine, and she was captivated. She enrolled herself as Babbage's interpreter to the world at large. Ada has been called the first computer programmer because her published notes on the analytical engine contain detailed programs. Letters this pair of visionaries wrote to one another show that Babbage was responsible for the most detailed programs. But while most of their contemporaries were unimpressed, Ada was enough of a mathematician to realize Babbage had invented a new kind of machine. She wrote that this was no mere calculating machine, that by using cards to program it, Babbage had ensured that there was no finite limit to the powers of the analytical engine. She even spoke of it composing some sort of mathematical music. Despite Ada's enthusiastic support, Babbage failed to win backing for his idea. People had understood when he wanted to build a machine to calculate tables, but not this vague, grandiose plan. So Babbage's dream of a general-purpose, programmable computer vanished for 100 years.